Good Tuesday morning, Patriots. I'm your host, John O'Connor, software programmer by day, conservative truth seeker by night, and this is O'Connor's Right Stand. How's everyone doing? Well, as I alerted you all to last week, O'Connor's Quick Strike has dropped as of yesterday. So, as a refresher, Quick Strike will be a quick hit on 3 news stories that I see as important and my unfiltered take on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The Right Stand will continue to drop on Tuesdays and Thursdays as a deep dive on a single thought, issue, or news event. After this, go check out O'Connor's Quick Strike by heading over to o'connorsquickstrike.com or find it on any of the major podcast streaming services. Also, my X handle has changed to O'Connor Podcasts, or at O'Connor Podcasts. I felt it needed to happen as I didn't want to handle 2 separate accounts, one for the Right Stand and one for Quick Strike. So with that in thought, I made the change to just have one single account. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on Quick Strike. I'll probably be tuning the format here for a bit, but I'd still love to have your thoughts. All right, let's get into it. The Right Stand starts now. Patriots, we have to start with the tragedy that rocked conservative America just days ago. The assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10th, 2025. The 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA was shot and killed at Utah Valley University while doing what he did best, engaging students in debate and defending conservative values. Charlie was conducting his Prove Me Wrong table debate as part of his American Comeback Tour when 22-year-old Tyler Robinson opened fire with a bolt-action rifle, striking Charlie in the neck with a single shot. The husband and father of 2 was pronounced dead at the hospital, leaving behind his wife Erica and their children. This wasn't random violence. This was a targeted political assassination, and the details that have emerged reveal a disturbing pattern we've seen before. Tyler Robinson was described by friends as pretty left on everything and the only member of his family that was really leftist. According to FBI Director Kash Patel, this was a motivated attack where the suspect had been taken over by leftist ideology. But here's the part that really exposes the pattern. Robinson was living with a transgender partner who, according to family members, hates conservatives and Christians. Utah Governor Spencer Cox confirmed that Robinson's roommate was a male transitioning to female and was Robinson's romantic partner. Even more chilling, the FBI is investigating evidence that multiple people, including several accounts that appear to belong to transgender individuals, knew about the assassination beforehand. Social media posts from as early as August 6 predicted that September 10th will be a very interesting day. And one account wrote, "It'd be funny if someone like Charlie Kirk got shot on September 10th. Laugh my ass off." After the murder, Robinson allegedly texted his transgender partner confessing to the crime, writing, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out." He signed bullet casings with messages like, "Hey fascist, catch." The same kind of dehumanizing language the left uses daily against conservatives. Charlie Kirk's assassination represents the culmination of years of leftist rhetoric calling conservatives fascists, Nazis, and threats to democracy. When you constantly dehumanize your political opponents, eventually someone will take action. Charlie paid the ultimate price for standing up for conservative values. Charlie Kirk's murder isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a systematic campaign of political violence against conservatives that the mainstream media desperately wants to memory hole. While they obsess over January 6th like it's the only political violence that has ever happened, there's a clear documented pattern of left-wing attacks that they refuse to acknowledge. And increasingly, these attacks involve transgender perpetrators. This isn't about isolated incidents or random acts of violence. This is about a coordinated assault on conservative voices, Republican officials, and anyone who dares to challenge their radical agenda. And there's a disturbing transgender connection that the media refuses to discuss. June 14th, 2017. Republican congressmen are practicing for the annual congressional baseball game in Alexandria, Virginia. It's 6:30 in the morning. 24 GOP lawmakers, including House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, are on the field doing what Americans have done for over a century: playing baseball. Enter James T. Hodgkinson, a 66-year-old Bernie Sanders volunteer from Illinois who belonged to Facebook groups called Terminate the Republican Party and The Road to Hell is Paved with Republicans. This wasn't some random crazy person, Patriots. This was a dedicated left-wing activist who had written 27 letters to his local newspaper, all anti-Republican. He posted, "Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump & Co." Trevor didn't just show up that day. He'd been planning this. He asked a congressman whether Republicans or Democrats were practicing. Once confirmed it was that it was Republicans, he opened fire with an SKS rifle and 9mm handgun, firing 70 rounds over 10 minutes. Steve Scalise was shot in the hip and nearly died. Congressional aide Zach Barth was shot in the leg. Lobbyist Matt Micah was shot in the chest. Capitol Police Officer Crystal Griner was shot in the ankle while heroically returning fire. If not for Scalise's security detail being present because of his leadership position, this would have been a massacre. And how did Bernie Sanders respond? With a weak, milquetoast statement condemning violence while refusing to acknowledge that his own inflammatory rhetoric about Republicans, that being the enemy, helped radicalize this terrorist. The media quickly moved on, treating it like an isolated incident rather than what it was: the logical conclusion of the left's dehumanization of conservatives. If you want to see the left's violence problem, look no further than the 2 assassination attempts against President Trump in 2024. July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, and September 15th at Trump International Golf Club in Florida. 2 different would-be assassins, same result. The left's dangerous rhetoric nearly got the president killed. In Butler, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks climbed onto a roof with an AR-15 and opened fire during a campaign rally. Trump was seconds away from death. The bullet grazed his ear, killing firefighter Corey Comparator and injuring 2 others. The Secret Service failures were so egregious that the director resigned in shame. Then, just 64 days later, Ryan Ruth waited 12 hours in the bushes at Trump's golf course with a rifle, planning another assassination attempt. This man had been radicalized by the same media that constantly calls Trump a threat to democracy and a fascist. 2 attempts on a former president's life in 2 months, and the media acts like this is normal. They spend more time analyzing Trump's dangerous rhetoric than they do examining how their own dehumanization campaign nearly got him killed. Patriots, we also need to address the elephant in the room that the mainstream media refuses to discuss: the alarming connection between transgender ideology and political violence against conservatives. Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson, was in a romantic relationship with a transgender partner, but this isn't an isolated case. Look at the pattern. Nicholas Rosk, who plotted to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, now identifies as Sophie and uses female pronouns according to recent court filings. Ross planned to kill 3 conservative justices to change the political balance of the Supreme Court. Audrey Hale, the Nashville Covenant school shooter who killed 3 children and 3 adults at a Christian school, identified as a transgender. Hale's writings, which were suppressed for over a year, revealed anti-white and anti-Christian motivations, including messages about wanting to kill all you little crackers. The FBI is now investigating whether multiple transgender individuals had advanced knowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination, with social media accounts belonging to transgender users posting predictions about the attack weeks in advance. This isn't coincidence. Patriots, when you combine radical left-wing ideology with the mental instability that often accompanies gender dysphoria, you get a recipe for violence. The left has weaponized transgenderism as part of their broader assault on traditional American values, and now we're seeing the deadly consequences. The media won't make these connections because it destroys their narrative that conservatives are the violent ones. But the facts speak for themselves. There's a clear pattern of transgender-motivated violence against Christians, conservatives, and traditional values. Our universities have become training grounds for left-wing violence, and conservative speakers are the primary targets. We've seen this pattern repeat across dozens of campuses. Conservative speakers announced, left-wing organizers mobilize, violence erupts, and university administrators either enable it or stand aside. Conservative activists regularly need security details just to speak at universities that our tax dollars support. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression documented 174 speaker deplatforming attempts in 2024, and 84 so far this year. And it's getting worse. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression's 2024 college free speech rankings found that 34% of college students now believe using violence to stop a campus speech is acceptable in some cases, up from just 20% in 2020. That's a 70% increase in 5 years. At Stanford University alone, 3/4 of students said shouting down speakers is acceptable, and more than a third said the same about using physical violence. We're literally watching the next generation of leftists being trained to use violence as a political tool. But nothing compares to the summer of 2020, when the left unleashed the most destructive period of political violence in American history since the Civil War. They called it mostly peaceful protests while cities burned and people died. The numbers don't lie, patriots. Property damage between 1 and 2 billion, the highest in American history. At least 25 people killed during the riots. Over 300 people facing federal charges for arson, explosives, and violence. Approximately 80 individuals charged with arson-related offenses. Murder rates spiked 30% in 2020 as the Ferguson effect took hold. In Portland alone, riots went on for over 100 consecutive nights. The federal courthouse was under constant siege. Rioters used commercial-grade fireworks as weapons, threw Molotov cocktails at federal agents, and created autonomous zones where law enforcement could not operate. Seattle's Chop Zone was a perfect example of left-wing extremism in action. They literally seceded from the United States, created their own police-free territory, and watched as multiple shootings occurred, including one that killed a teenager. Mayor Jenny Durkan called it a summer of love, while anarchists controlled 6 city blocks. And what was the media response? Fiery, but mostly peaceful protests became a meme because of how absurd their coverage was. They'd stand in front of burning buildings and claim everything was calm. Here's what really exposes their hypocrisy, patriots. The different treatment of left-wing violence versus conservative protests. January 6th gets a primetime congressional hearing, but the 2020 riots get memory hold. Conservative protesters get charged with sedition for walking through the Capitol, while Black Lives Matter rioters get charges dropped and bail funds supported by Kamala Harris. Steve Scalise nearly dies from a Bernie Bros assassination attempt, and it disappears from the news cycle in a week. But January 6th gets nonstop coverage for years. Supreme Court justices get death threats and assassination attempts, and the media focuses on their controversial decisions rather than the violence against them. When conservatives are attacked, it's treated as an isolated incident. When the left riots, it's a mostly peaceful response to systemic injustice. When Trump survives 2 assassination attempts, the media focuses on whether his rhetoric contributed to the climate of violence. This isn't journalism. It's propaganda designed to normalize violence against conservatives while criminalizing any pushback from our side. We can't discuss left-wing political violence without addressing Antifa, the black-clad anarchists who turned political violence into an art form. Despite media claims that Antifa isn't an organization, they've demonstrated remarkable coordination across multiple cities. During the 2020 riots, we saw identical tactics in Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, and other cities. Black bloc formations, commercial-grade fireworks used as weapons, coordinated attacks on federal buildings, and systematic doxing of police officers and conservative activists. The FBI has documented over 300 federal charges related to the 2020 violence, with approximately 80 individuals charged with arson and explosive offenses. That's not spontaneous protest. That's organized terrorism. And what did President Biden do? He called Antifa an idea, not an organization, during a presidential debate, giving them political cover to continue their campaign of violence. We also need to talk about the uncomfortable truth about how the media covers school shootings based on the perpetrator's political motivations. The Nashville Covenant school shooting in March 2023 is a perfect example. When Audrey Hale killed 3 children and 3 adults at the Christian school, authorities recovered writings that were initially called a manifesto. But here's what happened next. Those writings were suppressed for over a year through legal battles, with authorities claiming they contained sensitive information. When partial pages were finally leaked in November 2023, they revealed Hale had written about wanting to kill all you little crackers and F you, F with your white privileges. The Metropolitan Nashville Police Department's final report concluded Hale targeted the school because he believed the Christian faith of those within would make them meek and afraid. Yet the media largely ignored these anti-white, anti-Christian motivations. Compare that to how quickly they analyze and publicize the political connections of shooters when they can tie them to conservative ideologies. This selective coverage creates a false impression about where political violence actually comes from. So, what do we do about this, Patriots? First, we honor Charlie Kirk's legacy by refusing to be silenced. His wife Erica has been named the new CEO of Turning Point USA, and she vowed to 10x the organization. Since Charlie's assassination, Turning Point has received over 62,000 new requests for high school and college chapters. The left thought they could kill the movement by killing the man. Instead, they poured gasoline on the fire. Second, we document everything. Every attack, every threat, every instance of left-wing violence needs to be recorded and shared. The media won't do it, so we must. We need to expose the transgender connection that the mainstream media refuses to acknowledge. Third, we demand equal justice under law. If January 6 participants get years in prison, then Black Lives Matter rioters who caused billions in damages should face similar consequences. If conservative protesters get charged with sedition, then left-wing terrorists who assassinate conservative leaders should face the death penalty, which Utah prosecutors are seeking for Tyler Robinson. Fourth, we expose the media's complicity. Every time they downplay left-wing violence while amplifying conservative threats, we call them out. Every time they refuse to discuss the transgender violence connection, we document it. ABC News actually called Tyler Robinson's confession text to his transgender partner touching. Imagine if a conservative assassin had similar messages. Fifth, we support the families of victims like Charlie Kirk. Erica Kirk now wears Charlie's bloodstained St. Michael pendant as she carries on his mission. We stand with her and the thousands of other conservatives who have been targeted for their beliefs. And finally, we prepare ourselves and our communities. The left has shown they're willing to assassinate conservative leaders to achieve their political goals. We have a right to self-defense, and we need to be ready to exercise it. Patriots, what we're witnessing isn't random violence. It's a systematic campaign by the radical left to intimidate, silence, and eliminate conservative voices from American political life. Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10th was just the latest and most tragic example of where their dehumanizing rhetoric leads. The pattern is clear and documented, from Tyler Robinson's transgender partner who hates conservatives and Christians, to Nicholas Rosk's planned assassination of 3 Supreme Court justices, to Audrey Hale's anti-Christian attack on the Covenant School. There's a transgender violence connection that the mainstream media refuses to discuss because it destroys their narrative. Steve Scalise nearly died because a Bernie Sanders supporter decided Republicans needed to be eliminated. Donald Trump survived 2 assassination attempts because the media convinced unstable people he was Hitler. Brett Kavanaugh needed armed protection at his own home because the left couldn't accept a Supreme Court decision. And now Charlie Kirk is dead because a radicalized leftist with a transgender partner thought he could stop the conservative movement with a bullet. The mainstream media covers it up. Democrat politicians excuse it, and law enforcement often ignores it. But we see the pattern clearly. The left talks about threats to democracy while engaging in actual political terrorism. They call us fascists while assassinating our leaders. They lecture us about dangerous rhetoric while their own extremists commit mass murder. This is the real threat to our democracy, patriots. Not January 6th, not conservative protests, but the left's systematic use of political violence to achieve what they can't win at the ballot box. And increasingly, that violence is coming from individuals influenced by transgender ideology and the broader radical left agenda. Charlie Kirk died doing what he loved, defending conservative values and engaging with young people about the future of America. His blood is on the hands of every media figure, every Democrat politician, and every left-wing activist who've spent years calling him a fascist and a Nazi. They created the climate that led to his assassination. We must document it, expose it, and fight back against it. Legally and peacefully, but firmly. Because if we don't, the violence will only get worse, and the America we love will be lost forever. Charlie Kirk's legacy demands nothing less than our complete commitment to the cause he died defending. That's the hard truth that they don't want you to hear. Keep fighting, patriots. Keep standing for what's right. And never let them gaslight you into thinking their violence is somehow justified while ours is not. Until next time, patriots, this is John O'Connor, signing off.